Good morning, and welcome to my Borderpolar podcast. Today I wanted to come on and talk a little bit about rumination or overthinking. Sort of share a little exercise that I learned years and years and years ago that has helped me to stop being an over worrier. Not quite stop, but definitely reduce my ruminating compared to what it used to be. So what is rumination? Here's a couple of definitions from the internet that are a little varying in their descriptions. So obsessive thinking about an idea, situation, or choice, especially when it interferes with normal mental functioning. So when we're talking about ruminating, we're not just talking about regular worrying. We're talking about constant and repetitive thoughts about a problem, its causes and consequences, or not a problem necessarily, but focused attention on the symptoms of one's own distress and its possible causes and consequences, as opposed to its solutions. So rumination is going to be over worrying. A lot of times for me, there's so many worries going on at the same time that I can't even necessarily pick one out. But when you're worrying about something, there's a tool you can use called the worry Venn diagram. My therapist about 12 years ago introduced this to me. He told me to think about all the things I worry about in one part of the Venn diagram, and then all the things that I have control over in another part of the Venn diagram, and then that center spot is going to be your sweet spot. The things that you can control and that you worry about, and you're going to learn to allow yourself to worry about only those things you have control over. So what's the process of using this Venn diagram? Now let me say that I used it with everything I worried about all day long for probably 4 years before I didn't need to actually think about the Venn diagram every single time I had a worry. But the first thing you want to do is recognize your worries. It might be a good idea to write down a whole list of all the things that you worry about, even if it's something so small as what I'm going to wear tomorrow, to something so big as wars going on in the world. Anything that worries you. I was worrying so much about everything and anything in the world that I stopped watching the news when I was 15 years old because I couldn't handle all the worries that I was taking on. And I get the news, but I don't really watch the news. I try to stay away from things that cause me to worry about things that I can't control. So recognize your worries, write down your worries, and then write down the things you have control over. And I did this for a while before I realized that there were only 2 things that I have control over in this entire world: the words that come out of my mouth and the actions that I take. I tried writing down more things in that box of what I have control over, and it all came down to that, no matter what the problem was: the words that come out of my mouth and the actions that I take. Those are the only 2 things I have control over. So then make your worry Venn diagram. List all the things you're worrying about, list the things you have control over, and give yourself an allowance for that sweet spot in the middle to go ahead and worry about those things that you have control over. But how do we use this tool? Well, after you've figured out which worries you have control over and allow yourself to worry about those things, then you take action. And the key to this is practice, practice, practice. So for each problem you come across, you can ask yourself these questions. So you have a problem that you've come across, you recognize, I am worried. So here's a little flow chart. Think to yourself, what am I worried about? And can I control any parts of the thing that worry me? If the answer is yes, you can move on to what can I do and what can I say and how can I help solve the problem, and then you can move on to taking action. But if the answer is no, if you can't control any part of the thing that worries you, here's where you're going to train your brain to refocus on a problem you can do something about, or maybe another worry that's floating around in your head, and then you can start the same process over with it. And what am I worried about now? Can I control any parts of this thing? Rumination is difficult, and this does take a lot of practice, but if you use this, it will become sort of second nature. When you notice a worry coming into your mind, you think to yourself, can I do anything about this? And if the answer is no, you can retrain your brain to sort of let it go and focus on something else, something that you can control. And it really is useful and it really is helpful if you put it into practice. And when I mean put it into practice, I mean every day, all the time. If you're ruminating, you know it. You're worrying about things that are big, things that are little, things that are hypothetical, things that are real. If they're hypothetical, let them go. If you can't do anything about it, if this is a worry that has to do with, something going on across the globe, let it go. It's nice to be empathetic, and it's nice to care about strangers all over the world, but it's not useful to burden yourself with extra worries that you can't do anything about when there are things in your life that you can do things about. So you practice, and you practice this, and it will help with rumination. It will. I know it might take a while, and for me, cognitive behavioral therapy, reframing my thoughts, was something that I didn't think was possible when I first started it, but it is. It just takes a lot of work and a lot of practice. So every time you have a worry, think about that. What am I worried about? Can I control it? If there's anything you can say or do to help with the problem, then you can take action, which, motivationally speaking is another step, but it gives you a focus, a way to refocus onto something that could be productive and could be possible for you, rather than worrying about things that are impossible to do anything about. So here's just a little bit about rumination, and a tool that I used for a very long time before it became easier for me to walk through life with a much more positive attitude, because I wasn't so worried about so many things that I couldn't do anything about all the time. Or if it was, at least I knew what to do about it. I hope this is helpful to you. If you think it might be helpful to someone that you know, please feel free to share the video, and have a nice day. Thank you for watching my Borderpolar podcast.